Good morning, everybody. My name's Ed Cameron. I'm the chair of the Newburyport Democratic City Committee, and I want to welcome you here for our 8th annual 3 Towns and 2 Cities Democratic Breakfast. For those of you who are not from one of our 3 towns and 2 cities, we are the city of Amesbury, the town, if I can do this alphabetically, the town of Newbury, the city of Newburyport, the town of Salisbury, and the town of West Newbury. So those are the 5 here. I wanted to first introduce our mayor, Donna Holliday, a good, strong Democrat, and she's going to welcome us here this morning.
Thank you, Ed. It's always a pleasure to welcome all of you to the wonderful city of Newburyport. It's been a great year, Democrats. We had a great vote in November, and we sent Barack Obama back to the White House. We unseated a state senator, and I am so proud that Newburyport has a state senator, Katie Ives. And one of the hardest fought races was John Tierney, and we returned an amazing man to Congress. But our work is not done. We have an election coming up that's really, really important for our state senator, and I think people are asleep out there. So it's really great to have you here, and I know John Walsh will just rally the troops like he always does. So we've got to keep working hard, moving forward. Have a great breakfast, and go Dems.
So to kick this off and really get this rolling, I'd like to welcome Congressman Tierney.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you. I would mention a couple of things before we have so many other people that we want to hear from. One is this notion that our Republican friends in Washington have about austerity and about the fact that the only thing they seem to be worried about is the deficit boogeyman that they have out there over and over again. You just have to look at the morning paper and see the low job numbers to understand that they just don't get it. With this sequestration, which is something they absolutely wanted, it's their way of shrinking government. This is not essentially about the deficit, even though that's what they say. This is, in their mind, about reducing the size of government. And sequestering money is one way for them to do it without taking responsibility for making the hard choices. Just like Paul Ryan's budget will continually tell you that they want to cut, cut, cut. They'll never tell you what they have in mind to cut, and they always try to make sure that somebody else has to make the hard decision or gets the rap for doing it. But you can see what's happening to this economy because they are not focusing where they should. Biggest problem this country has right now is unemployment. That's where we should be focusing, putting people back to work and growing this economy. That doesn't get done by sequestration that lops off 8,000 Head Start teachers and puts 70,000 Head Start students on the streets. It doesn't happen by closing down small airport flight control people. It doesn't happen by hitting the Title I program in education. You know, I read in the newspapers how we really shouldn't be worried that this sequestration, cutting across budget, really hasn't impacted as much as they thought it would. You have to tell them this was not going to be a heart attack, this is going to be heart disease. And slowly but surely, over the summer, if they keep cutting back any program without mind to setting priorities, without deciding what can be cut and what need not be cut and what should be invested in, they're going to keep this economy spiraling downward and try to blame it on somebody else. We have so much that we could be doing, so much that we should be doing. You know, we can be keeping people at work, and we can be getting people back to work. We have so much unfinished business with our infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, expansion of broadband, water and sewer projects, that if we just tended to that and had a federal partner with our state and our local communities, we could get that work done and put thousands and thousands of people to work. We go around from developing nation to developing nation, giving lectures to people, telling them that what they really need to be a developed nation is investments in infrastructure and in health and in education. And yet they do the opposite as Republicans in Washington. They do not invest in infrastructure. They try to cut back on job training and education, and they try to repeal the Affordable Care Act. They're moving in the wrong direction. The problem that we have is even the Republicans can't get along with themselves. You know, when they talk about, and I hear people say, you know, you folks or you guys down in Washington, we're missing the picture. When the Democrats were in charge in the House of Representatives from 2007 to 2010, it was the most productive Congress since 1964. Over 485 bills got signed into law. 81% of them were bipartisan. We had a Republican president for 2 of those years. It can be done. It takes leadership. It takes people who believe that there's a role for government and that the idea and the responsibility of legislating is reaching across the aisle, making a reasonable compromise, not of your principles, but of making sure that everybody has an investment in making this country great and moving it forward together. That is something that John Boehner and his caucus do not have. That is what is slowing down the progress of this country. That is why we're not investing where we should invest, and that will continue to happen until we get rid of that element of his party, and in fact, until we take them out of the leadership in the House and put people back in charge on how to move this country in the right direction. We're lucky to have a good delegation both in the Senate and the House in this state. But we all have friends in other communities, in other states, where they don't get it. Now, I don't know if you can go in some places and have any success. I did see that article in the Globe the other day about my colleague, Mr. Hulskamp, in Kansas, who not only thinks himself that it's a great thing to just say no to everything, but apparently his constituency thinks it's a great idea to just say no to everything. And that's part of the problem. But there are other places we know where people just need somebody supporting them. There are Republicans who are afraid of their own Tea Party membership, the right wing. They need to know there's a place for them to go. When we passed the Violence Against Women's Act, when we extended out the debt ceiling, when we had relief for Sandy, all of those votes were a combination of about 50 or 60 Republicans, all of the Democrats in the House, and it passed. That's the formula. What reasonable people we can get out of that conference, our caucus, move forward, get it done in the Senate, sign it into law. But the thing that needs attention most is getting people back to work, growing our economy, and making sure that this country has every opportunity to compete and that every child has an opportunity. That's what we should be about. That's what we're down there fighting for. I take a lot of pleasure in having your support and going down there and making the case. It's the only reasonable case down there at the moment because we've tried their way and we can see how the economy is grinding to a halt and we don't want it to spiral downward. So thank you for the opportunity to go down there and work with you and fight for you. We have great people who want to listen to you today. Again, thanks for your support in the last election. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Next, I would like to introduce our local state representative, fresh from a soccer field in Newburyport, where his kids are, at least one of his kids was playing soccer. He doesn't need any introduction, Representative Mike Costello.
Thank you, Ed. And it is a pleasure to be here. And my kids are still playing. I'm actually their coach, so that's why Ed took me out of turn. I apologize to the folks that are above me. But it is, you know, the reason I wanted to say a few words, I would have just skipped saying anything, but I think it's important for the folks that come here to Newburyport to understand, and I think they do understand how important this group is. When the North Shore goes red, we go blue. And we do that not because we feel that way, but because we work hard. And I'm very excited. It's been my first year working with Senator Ives. And I'd say she's the best looking, but I saw what happened to the president when he said it and the AG. So I'll let her say I'm the best looking rep instead. I am here, and I wanted to give 2 seconds of my time, and I'm going to give it up to my good friend Barry Feingold, who...
Thank you, Mike, and it's great to see Mike and very close to his family, Nick and everyone else. And I just want to be real quick, and it's true. Look, We have a lot to do. We have to win this U.S. Senate race. We have to keep it Democrat. After that, we have to make sure that we re-elect people like Congressman John Tierney. He's doing a great job, not only for this area, but for Tewksbury and Andover as well. We have to re-elect my good friend Katie Ives, who's doing an incredible job as state senator. Let me tell you, she is a rising star in the state Senate. We need to re-elect people like Mike Costello, and we need to keep the governor's seat Democratic, and we need to keep the treasurer's seat Democratic. So I look forward to talking to all of you. I thank you for all you do, helping us Democrats, and let's get it done this year and next year as well. Thank you very much.
Live from Abington, John Walsh.
Over the course of the last 6+ years, we have moved Massachusetts forward together. As legislators, as governor, as citizens, as democratic activists. We've recovered from the worst economy in the nation's history, stronger and faster. We're #1 in education. We're #1 in healthcare. We're #1 in veterans benefits. We're #1 in energy conservation, #1 in clean energy policy and achievements because of your work. You're responsible for all that. You should take a bow for it. But you're responsible to make sure it keeps continuing. And I would urge you to not make assumptions on what is going to happen, whether you agree with it or disagree with it. Reinforce the people who agree with you and urge your friends to vote on your values. I look forward to working with you. June 25th, we're going to send Elizabeth Warren, a strong partner in the United States Senate, and 2014, we're going to have a lot of fun together. Thanks, everyone.
John, thank you so much. As Haley gets her coffee, before I introduce our next speaker, I just want to recognize the chairs from the various city and town committees. From Amesbury, if they could each stand up. From Amesbury, Rebecca Jordan. From Newbury, Nancy Weinberg. From Newburyport, me. From Salisbury, Lou Masiello. Today is a special day in Lou's life and his wife Diane. It's their, Diane Masiello, if they could both stand up, it's their 44th wedding anniversary. And from West Newbury, Kathy Pasquina. So I'd like to welcome our next speaker, Secretary of the Commonwealth, Bill Galvin, who's been here many times in the past.
And I think winning this fight is so fundamentally important. It's important not only for the issue of making sure we have a full complement of representation in the United States Senate, but it's important to send that additional message beyond. Because, you know, while we won the election, President Obama was reelected, the Senate is overwhelmingly Democratic, or more Democratic than it was. The House is less Republican than it was. We still haven't made the big progress that we need to make on the issues that are so important. Some of the ones that I'm very concerned about, for instance, financial security as far as individual investors are concerned. We see the SEC and some of the other regulatory agencies that Barney Frank worked so hard to improve the powers of, not able to use their power because they're facing pushback from the Congress. We see that in so many areas that we really, really care about. So a message coming from Massachusetts that's in any way ambivalent will be seized upon by those that want to slow down our agenda. So I think it's critically important that we make sure that we not only win on the 25th of June, but win big. And win big to send that message that the issues we care about, the concerns we have, the progress we wish to make, we don't want to see the remainder of President Obama's term be a matter of slowing down his agenda. We must make progress on gun control, immigration, all of the big issues that we as Democrats stand for, and we particularly as Massachusetts Democrats stand for. I delight to come here because it tells me so often and so strongly that the Democratic Party in Massachusetts is thriving. You are the living evidence. Thank you very, very much.
His office also oversees school building projects, and there are two incredibly vital and important ones going on in Newburyport now, and we want to thank you for that. So please welcome Treasurer Stephen Grossman.
Thank you. I do chair the Mass School Building Authority, and a number of the communities represented here have had new roofs or boilers or windows over the past few years, but we will be back here in the next few days for the groundbreaking of Knockmolen. We'll be back in May for Bresnahan, and these are the kinds of investments that we make, and we make them because we're optimistic about the future. And there are lots of reasons to be optimistic here this morning. Think about what's going on in the elementary and middle schools here in Newburyport. Think about Salisbury, even after the disaster and the problems they've had with the beaches, and I look forward to coming up and visiting, celebrating its 375th birthday coming up in September. Think about what Thatcher Keyser has done in Amesbury. Think about the almost $100 million of private investment that's going to take place over the next few years in Amesbury, a city that is transforming right in front of our eyes because of great leadership in the mayor and in the city council. I mean, that's the kind of leadership we need. But there's more than that. We've had an explosion of entrepreneurship, immigrant entrepreneurship in this Commonwealth over these last few years. Massachusetts was just named for the second year in a row the #1 state in the country in terms of entrepreneurship. And that's critical because small businesses are the backbone of every one of the communities represented here, whether you're from one of the 5 host communities or any of the others that are represented, cities and towns. And I'm very proud of the fact that we created the Small Business Banking Partnership, put $5 million into the Newburyport 5, money in Eastern Bank, they're making loans. Orange Leaf got a loan, we opened up that store. Some may go to homemade ice cream places in Middleton or in Boxford or somewhere else, but we believe that investing money in the private sector is what creates jobs. There's also other reasons to be optimistic. And I just want to talk for 1 second about my pal, Katie O'Connor Ives, because Katie called me one day, out of the blue, I didn't know her. She was a senior at Mount Holyoke College, and she said, I'm a senior, I want to get involved in the Gore campaign. You were the former chairman of the DNC, can you tell me how? Within an hour, she was involved with the campaign, she did a fabulous job. When that campaign ended, she helped me in a statewide campaign that I ran. When that campaign ended, she went to law school. When that was over, she and Jeff came up here to Newburyport, serves on the city council, and got elected and is doing already a fabulous job and chairing one of the most important committees for this part of the state in the state Senate, because she deals with arts and culture and tourism, and I can't think of anything more important from communities that mean to be destinations. And so I am thrilled that Katie O'Connor Ives is doing such a great job for you and for the people of this district. Things we need to accomplish here in this Commonwealth over the next few years. John Walsh talked about our values, and I'm going to end on the subject of values because ultimately that's what brings us all together. And the greatest Democrat of all time, at least the person I believe set the tone for this country during the worst economic times in 100 years, that was Franklin Roosevelt. He got up 76 years ago and he said to the American people, he said, the test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much, but whether we provide enough for those who have too little. Too few jobs, too little education, too little health care, too little economic opportunity, too little hope, and too little dignity. I am proud to be a Democrat because as long as there is someone in our Commonwealth, somebody in our midst, somebody in our town, a neighbor, a friend, a co-worker who lacks hope, dignity, and economic opportunity, we're dedicated to be there and to provide that for them. That's what the governor's working on. That's what Mike Costello is working on. That's what Katie Ives is working on. That's what we're working on. That's what our values are all about. So when we come together at an event like this, and we recommit and rededicate ourselves to the fundamental principles and values of the Democratic Party and of this great Commonwealth, and we resolve that we are going to work to be the best place to live and build a bright future for every one of our people, and for our seniors, and for our veterans, and for those who need financial literacy, and for those young people in schools who need to make sure that every school classroom in this Commonwealth is digital learning ready within the next few years, so that we can build the kind of innovation economy that serves all of our people and leaves no one behind. That's what Democrats are all about. That's why I'm in this business. That's why we're all here. I thank you so much for listening.
So please welcome Newburyporter, Katie Ives.
So good morning, and I'm happy to say good morning, my fellow Democrats. I want to emphasize the local because, you know, my background is on the city council, and I can speak from my own personal experience how critical it is to have colleagues that we can work with, people that represent our local interests. And we have to work every bit as hard for those campaigns. They may not be as, you know, flashy or glossy, but you know, they're our friends and our neighbors, and they put themselves out there, and we need to be there right with them. If we want certain outcomes, we have to work for that, because those local decisions percolate up, and then candidates also percolate up. So I just wanted to touch upon that. It's funny because it's only been 3 months since I took the oath in the state Senate. I've learned a lot since then, but I want to take another opportunity to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to be in that position. I just want to say thank you for that because, as you know, these are very critical times up there on Beacon Hill, and it's a complete honor for me to be able to represent you on these very important issues and the decision-making process. It's also an opportunity for me to ask you for your input. One issue in particular that is right around the corner is that of transportation, and what will the strategy be, what will the plan be for long-term, predictable, stable financing for a transportation system that we all agree merits investment. We want to see it happen, and I'm happy to report that everyone agrees in our party that that is the correct priority at this time, but how do we do it? The devil's in the detail. And when I'm there and I'm contemplating the goods and the bad of each potential prospect for new revenue, I have the following things in mind. I think about accountability. I want to make sure that if we are asking folks for more revenue, they're going to see a bang for their buck, and there's accountability for a transportation system that's safe and clean and reliable, something that people can truly opt into in lieu of sitting in congestion in their cars. The other thing I'm looking for is creativity. You know, I want to be able to think outside the box so that residents don't think that we're using the same old ideas and convenient ideas to generate revenue. One idea that I've been pitching out there to anyone who will listen is the concept of express lane tolling, an option that's done in DC and Virginia and Maryland, where we have our high occupancy vehicle lanes, our carpool lanes. Some states actually charge a small fee if you want to circumvent traffic and be able to use that. So it's more of an opt-in source of revenue instead of a tax. Those are the types of creative ideas that require planning, but it shows the public that we are planning, and it's not a stopgap type of solution. The other thing I'm looking for is a revenue stream that is not going to impact those folks that don't have any discretionary income. I feel like we can do that. And I'm happy to report, after 3 months of working with my colleagues in the Senate, this is a fantastic group of elected officials to get to work with. They're smart, they're focused on the long term. We're trying to build consensus. I ran on a platform of consensus building, and I'm optimistic that we can get there. But I do urge you to contact me and other senators that represent you if you're not in the 1st Essex District, because we want that input. Now is the time to give it. I also wanted to briefly say that I was the underdog in this race for state senate, and we worked really hard, and this is the outcome. So never underestimate that when Democrats organize, Democrats win, and keep that to heart with each of the races down the road that we're facing. We can't think that someone else is going to do it. We can't look back and place blame. There's no shortcut to hard work, knocking on doors, making phone calls, the stuff we know that works, because it does. So I hope that we're energized. I hope that we lean on each other and we meet those goals so that we can get the policies and see the values in place over the long term. Thank you very much.
I'd like to introduce the Essex County Registrar of Deeds, John O'Brien.
First, I want to thank you all, because back in 1977, and I do see some familiar faces out in the audience, I needed your help to become the first Democratic Register of Deeds in the history of Essex County. I won the race in Newburyport. We beat the Republican. There were 30 cities and towns, and it was a tremendous outpouring of support that I received. But I need your help again in this election, and let me tell you why. I don't know if some of you are aware, but I have been fighting to maintain the integrity and the accuracy of the land records in Essex County for the last 2.5 years. I've taken on banks, I've taken on Wall Street, and I'm the only Register of Deeds in the country that refuses to record fraudulent documents. And let me tell you why I do that. Because the backbone of this country is people's property rights. That's what we're all about, owning a home, selling a home, and knowing at any given time you can go to a registry of deeds and see exactly what documents are recorded on your property. But sadly, some of the largest banks in this country, Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, Citi, Deutsche Bank, Wells Fargo, and others, have created what I call a criminal conspiracy to defraud people of the right to know who owns your mortgage. I've been registered since 1977, and I can no longer look someone in the face and tell you who owns your mortgage, because quite frankly, I don't know, and the banks don't know, because they bundled them up and they sold them as exotic financial instruments all over the country. And how does that affect you? We have over 39,000 fraudulent documents sitting on my conference table for people just in the Southern Essex District. 90% of those people that have those documents are not in foreclosure. They're not people who are losing their homes because they were set up for failure from day one by these banks, who pretended to be smarter than all of us. They sat across the table and lent people money that they knew they could never pay back, but they didn't care because they sold the mortgage, they made the fees, and the scheme continued. Well, I try to expose that scheme, and I do it every single day. The City of Lynn is going to make history this Tuesday evening. They are going to pass the toughest homeowner protection ordinance in the United States of America. They're going to make sure that the big banks, and I want to make it clear, it's not the little banks on Main Street in Newburyport. It's not the banks in Lynn. It's not the little guys. It's the big guys. They did this. They're going to require those banks to sit across the table with residents of Lynn who are in foreclosure and have meaningful mediation to try to keep them in their home, extend their mortgage, lower their interest rate, reduce the principal, whatever you have to do, because that's the way we protect the integrity of neighborhoods. Because let me tell you something, everybody, and people say to me, John, you're fighting for deadbeats. I'm not fighting for deadbeats. I'm fighting for the American principle of property rights. And no matter what, and we know this better than anyone as Democrats, we do not take someone's home in the United States of America with a fraudulent document. That should not happen. We should all be appalled. But I appreciate you listening to me. I appreciate your support. And I invite you all to come down to the Salem Registry of Deeds, come in and see the crime scene. Take a look at the documents, because I'll guarantee you there are people in this room who have a fraudulent document on your chain of title and you don't even know it. Thank you very much.
That can only be one person in the room. Eileen Duff.
Thank you, Democrats, and good morning. I'm Eileen Duff. I'm the governor's counselor, one of those things that a lot of people don't know about. But we do appoint or have the final say on the judges' thumbs up or thumbs down. The two big issues that I've been speaking to potential justices about are how much do they know about addiction? How much do they know about getting people well? Between 60 and 80% of the folks in our jails are there for some drug or alcohol-related reason. I want to make sure the judges understand this and know that this is a disease and they have to be ready to address this when these folks come in the courtroom. The other issue that we have been publicly speaking about that has not been spoken about before in the council chambers are the special needs of LGBTQ youth. The amount of gay and lesbian homelessness, pregnancy among young lesbians is epidemic, and it is something that judges need to be very, very aware of when they're in a juvenile court. So if anyone has questions of me or would love to come, I know you would love to see a governor's council meeting. We meet every single Wednesday in the chambers. It's a constitutional office, and I'm happy to see any of you there and answer any questions.
And so let me introduce Mike Lake.
My name is Mike Lake, and I'm a candidate for Lieutenant Governor. I want to make it clear that I am not running for an office. I am running to make a difference. I am running to be your voice at the table, a voice around many issues, but two that I'm particularly passionate about: education and entrepreneurship. I believe these two particular issues provide the ladder that every one of us needs to meet our full potential. I believe that we have great strides to make still in Massachusetts. Do you know in Massachusetts we have high schools that have dropout rates higher than 50%? Meaning more children are dropping out than are graduating. What kind of future are we leaving for them? I want to be your voice at the table to tackle these tough issues, to talk about education, reforming education, talking about how we can make a real future for our children. In my own life, my dad, when he graduated high school, he had the skills he needed to be an entrepreneur, to start his own business. At the age of 18, he created a heating, ventilating, air conditioning company and ran that successful business for 18 years. At the age of 36, he suddenly passed away. My 32-year-old mother, also with only a high school education, took over that business and ran it for 2 years until she could sell it. Meanwhile, she was raising her 5-year-old son, her 3-year-old daughter. She was a woman working in the heating, ventilating, air conditioning business 30 years ago. You can imagine what that was like. My family has survived because of entrepreneurship. And because of the sacrifices that my family made for me, my mother, my father, and so many others, and because of the investment that our government made in me through public education, I was the first to graduate college in my family. I graduated with the opportunities that I've been given to serve as President Clinton's Special Assistant for White House Operations, to be the founder and executive director now of the World Class Cities Partnership, an organization that brings together cities from around the world to identify and share best practices so that we can have practical solutions to the challenges plaguing our urban centers. Future is now. Our promise is a greater tomorrow. I need your help to be your next Lieutenant Governor. Please visit my website at electmikelake.com. Sign up today. I promise we won't put you to work till after the special election, but I do need you to join us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Next, I would like to introduce Wellesley Selectman Dr. Joseph Avalone, who will tell you what he is planning on doing in the year 2014.
Thank you very much for giving me a little time today to tell you about myself and about my thoughts for the Commonwealth in 2014 and beyond. I'm going to tell you why I think I can make a big difference in the Commonwealth with a lot of help from people like you, but I first need to tell you a little bit about what motivates me to do so. I went to medical school and became a surgeon because I wanted to help people, and that's really driven my whole career. But I learned over time that I could have a bigger impact on people by being a leader and a manager in the healthcare system itself. And so that's really where I have focused. I have been practiced medicine. I've run a very large healthcare organization in Massachusetts where I have dealt with all the major institutions and all the leaders, and I understand what it takes for healthcare cost control, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. I've been an entrepreneur. I built a business in Massachusetts, know what it takes to hire a workforce here and be an entrepreneur, the kind of entrepreneurship that we've been talking about here. And for the last 6 years, I've been running a large global division of an international drug research company. We have 14,000 employees in 51 countries. So I'm in the global economy competing every day, and I know what that's like, and I know what the workforce is like, and I know what our workforce in Massachusetts is going to have to be like in order to compete as we go forward. So I think I can make a big difference. I think I'm the right person at the right time. And I see two major things that the next governor, whoever he or she is, has got on their desk that has to be attended to. The first is workforce development for the new kinds of work skills that are going to be necessary to attract and grow the new kinds of industries that are growing up around the world. And that includes new kinds of light manufacturing, so-called smart manufacturing, life sciences, healthcare itself, telecommunications, information technology. These are the kinds of industries that actually can grow here if we have the middle skills, if we have the right kind of work skills in our workforce, and we don't right now. We have all the PhDs and the scientists, we're the innovators, we can create lots of jobs, but they don't grow here. We don't build out the workforces here, and that's what our economy needs. And so I think the key for that is going to be to refocus and repurpose and integrate and centralize the mission in our community and state colleges. We have a wonderful system, but it's relatively semi-autonomous, and it's not particularly focused on this mission, and it has to be. And believe me, we have workforces all over the world. I see lots and lots of countries, and I see what the countries are doing, let alone our state is doing to prepare those workforces. And this is the kind of partnership, a new kind of partnership, that the state government can do and enter into for the private sector to grow and thrive here, and therefore for the benefit of all of us. The second thing that the next governor is going to have on his or her desk is controlling healthcare costs. We have universal access, and we can be very proud of that, very proud in Massachusetts that we secured that. It's a value we hold dear. But we've had double-digit healthcare cost increases for over a decade, long before we got to universal access, and it's going to continue on until we go about the very hard work of changing the way we deliver medicine in this state. And I've got 30 years of experience with that. I know all about that. I know it can be done. I want you to remember two things: the new work skills for a new economy and affordable health care. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. Next, I'd like to introduce Stephen Kerrigan.
Thanks, Ed. My name is Steve Kerrigan. I am a candidate for Lieutenant Governor of Massachusetts as well. My entire career and my entire life has been based on things that I can do for my community, my Commonwealth, and my country. I've had an opportunity throughout my life to serve our Commonwealth and our country in many, many ways. But this love of public service didn't come from nowhere. It came from my parents, like most of us. My father worked for 31 years, every morning, getting up early in the morning, strapping on spikes on his feet and a leather strap in his hand, climbed utility poles every day. It wasn't easy work, but it was the work that he had to do to put food on his table and to provide for us. My mother was then and still is the school secretary in our public school in Lancaster. For all of you who know about public school, which all of you do, she has seen more people go in and out of that school. Generations of families have gone by her desk. She's welcomed them in the morning, said goodbye to them at night, and probably treated more cases of sniffles than Kleenex. But she has been there as a guiding focus for me. But throughout that time, not just through work, they've given to their community. They've committed their time to the community. And so it's because of their sacrifices and their hard work that I've had an opportunity to do what I've done in my career. I've served as a finance committee member and a member of the Board of Selectmen in my hometown, which was a great honor in my life. I've also had the opportunity to work for the greatest United States Senator in the history of the Senate, Senator Ted Kennedy, who I worked for 15 years. They gave me the opportunity to stand in the Oval Office with the President and to work on behalf of so many folks in this Commonwealth. I created a small nonprofit called the Mass Military Heroes Fund, which supports the families of fallen service members all across Massachusetts who paid the greatest price you can for our freedom. So it's those guiding principles that my parents gave us and that dedication and commitment that really gave me the opportunity of a lifetime, which is to come here today and talk to you about what I'd like to do as your Lieutenant Governor. So I just want to thank you guys very, very much for having me here today. Thank everybody for your participation here in the party. And I know that for the next 3 weeks, I'm going to be working incredibly hard on behalf of the people of Massachusetts and this party to make sure that we get the choice, as John Walsh said, between the good and the better as our nominee for the Democratic Party. And then I'm not taking my foot off the gas until June 25th. And then we'll see you all right after that at a victory party and then on until 2014. So thank you guys very, very much for having me here this morning. Appreciate all your help.
And now, without any further ado, Attorney General Martha Coakley.
So let me just say a couple of things about why I support Ed Markey. One of the things you may not know, and one of the things I know that Treasurer Grossman spoke about this very eloquently, about the proud role that Massachusetts has had in protecting marriage equality. Our court in 2004 was the first in the country to say that same-sex marriage is required under our Constitution. We were the first state, when we filed suit against the Defense of Marriage Act, successfully, to say that we should not be discriminated against in Massachusetts. We should not let the federal government tell us what marriage equality should be, and we think that we're going to be successful on that. I was lucky enough to be in the Supreme Court last week listening to those arguments, and it was really encouraging to hear at least 5 of the justices cite from the amicus briefs and the work that we did here in Massachusetts to say, if you're a veteran and you're married, your spouse should be treated the same way. You shouldn't have 1,000 different federal rules and regulations that affect your benefits just because you're a same-sex marriage. And we Democrats, and particularly in Massachusetts, have been on the right side of history on this, and I am hopeful very soon we will see that happen, not just here in Massachusetts, but nationally. And you know something? Ed Markey voted against DOMA. You may not know that, but at a time when it was not popular to oppose the Defense of Marriage Act, Ed Markey stood up for what was the right thing to do, even though it was not popular. It's one reason I support him. I also support him because I know and you know that we need a partner for Elizabeth Warren in Washington who is going to stand firm on women's reproductive rights. And Ed Markey, we elect him our next senator, and I think he's here with Susan, his terrific partner. So I'm going to turn it back to Ed, but thank you all very much. And let's get to work.
Thank you. So, just absolutely fantastic to be here. My name is Ed Markey, and I am running for the United States Senate, ladies and gentlemen. I married a Jewish doctor. This is my wife, Dr. Susan Blumenthal, so please stand up. Susan, beautiful. It's kind of like the pluperfect form of 2 different species, an Irish Catholic politician and a Jewish doctor, okay? So, we both see different things in every room, which is absolutely amazing. So thank you, and all I can say to you is this, that running for the Senate is a tremendous adventure. And for me, kind of the quintessential moment so far was about 6 weeks ago, and I was up in Lawrence, and Marcos Evers is the state representative from Lawrence, and he was introducing me in Spanish and in English to his Dominican American supporters at the Rios restaurant. And I got up to tell a story, and it was a story about my father. My father grew up in South Lawrence on 88 Phillip Street in the first floor of a triple-decker as he was heading towards graduation from Lawrence, the vocational program at Lawrence High School, class of 1929. Not a great year to be graduating from high school, but that's where we're from. And he was the second youngest, and my Aunt Margie passed away about 3 years ago. She was the youngest of the 5 children who grew up there. And so I said to my wife that day, let's go up after the funeral and ring the doorbell on 88 Phillip Street, first floor, triple-decker, South Lawrence, and see who lives there now in the shadow of the mills. And the door opened, and it was a Dominican family with their children in the same space that the 5 Markey children had grown up. And the accents were different, but the aspirations clearly the same for those children as for the Markey children at that time. And it is a great country when the son of someone who grew up on the first floor of a triple-decker at 88 Phillip Street in South Lawrence can run for the United States Senate. It is a great country. But I realized that our job, our responsibility now, is to make sure that we break down all of the barriers that exist as discrimination against this generation. coming along. Those kids on the first floor, those kids growing up in all of the communities that we represent here in Massachusetts, but all across the country. That we ensure that we provide a democratization of access to opportunity through education, through healthcare, and through breaking down of the barriers of discrimination. So, as I run, I listen to people and what their concerns are. And one of the things I hear, no matter where I go, is they don't like the idea of assault weapons being on the streets with magazine cartridges with 30 bullets that belong on the battlefields of the world, but not on the streets of America. And people want criminal background checks at these gun shows so that people can't buy these weapons, and that they believe the only technology that should be near a child in a schoolyard is a computer and not a gun. And ladies and gentlemen, that is really at the heart of this issue, that we have to make sure that we don't allow sequestration to be cutting the educational programs for the children in our country, at the same time that we would allow the NRA to keep their vice-like grip on the Congress to block the kinds of changes that are needed in order to protect children where they study. We also need to make sure that we ensure that a woman has a right to choose, and a woman is not paid 77 cents on the dollar for every job that a man makes. We have to make sure we provide a breakdown of the discriminatory barriers that exist for the LGBT community. We have to ensure that we just take note of the fact that last week, Paul Ryan, in the Republican budget that actually passed again on the House floor over our objection, repealed Obamacare. And that's how dead set they are on ensuring that we do not provide that kind of care. And that was the best vote of my entire congressional career, because it was the fulfillment of the Democratic dream from Harry Truman all the way through our hero, Ted Kennedy, right to Barack Obama. And so in that bill, every child gets health care in the whole country. If you become sick, you can no longer go bankrupt. 2/3 of all personal bankruptcies were because of illness until 3 years ago. 2/3 of all personal bankruptcies. There's now a cap on that. Being a woman is no longer a pre-existing condition that allows for higher fees to be charged. Okay? Just absolutely unbelievable. And if you have a pre-existing condition, you cannot be denied health insurance as well. So we were running a sick care system in the United States, and we wanted to run a health care system, and that's what we're beginning to do in that, because the sick care system needed CPR. C for coverage for everyone, P for focus on prevention, community health centers, ensuring that prostate screening, breast cancer, all covered for free as part of a insurance policy, not with an out-of-pocket payment as well that then discouraged many people from actually getting the preventative care. And R for research, because research is medicine's field of dreams from which we harvest the findings that give hope to families that we are going to be able to find the clues that will unlock the cures for those diseases that have been running through people's families for generations. 5 million people, for example, have Alzheimer's right now, and it costs the federal government $131 billion last year just to take care of them. There are going to be 15 million baby boomers with Alzheimer's. So you can't pay $400 billion a year and only have 500 million trying to find the cure. But in sequestration, the NIH budget gets cut 8% per year, every year for the next 9 years in a row. Does that make any sense at all? Of course it does not. And so research is medicine's field of dreams, and we must be the voice, Massachusetts, and going down there as the innovation state to make sure that we battle for the funding that makes those cures possible. And, you know, in a larger sense, the planet is running a fever as well. And there are no emergency rooms for sick planets. And so we have to ensure that we put in place the cures, and that's wind and solar and biomass and geothermal and plug-in vehicles and buildings that are twice as efficient that are constructed in our country as have ever been constructed in the past, and appliances that are twice as efficient, and that we put in place and we invent here in this innovation economy the technologies which are going to be needed, not just here, but to be deployed in Asia and Africa and South America. That is our job. We did it with telecommunications technologies in the 1990s, and that new technology wraps its way around the whole world so that kids in Tahrir Square are just patting their pockets to make sure their iPhones are on and they can use them. And that didn't exist in the United States or any other place in the world just 17 years ago. That's how quickly, if American ingenuity is allowed to be unleashed, and we must do the same thing for climate change. If Superstorm Sandy had just a slightly different weather pattern, it would have hit Massachusetts. And Newburyport would have become a disaster area. All along our coast, from Plum Island all the way down to Provincetown, a disaster area. For New Jersey and New York, the disaster relief, $65 billion. That's 2 years of the entire National Institutes of Health budgets to find the cure for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and cancer and diabetes. It would have been devastating. But if we don't put the cures in place, that will look like a small storm compared to what could be coming. And so the least that we should be able to say, if that storm ever is arriving, that we really tried to put in place the policies that would have averted those catastrophic storms. That's our responsibility. That's Massachusetts' responsibility. That's the message we have to send to Washington, that we want to unleash this green generation. We want to unleash this green revolution that we know we can invent and deploy to avoid those worst catastrophic consequences. And you know what links all of it together is one issue. And that issue is this, and it's one of the worst Supreme Court decisions in history. And we need a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission. You know, in 49 states in 2012, the Koch brothers arrived. Karl Rove arrived. Only one state was spared that. That was Massachusetts, because to his credit, Scott Brown partnered with Elizabeth Warren to keep that money out. But all three Republicans refused to take the pledge. And so there's only 24 days left before the primary. That's all that's left. And on the 25th day, the Koch brothers and Karl Rove are coming to Massachusetts. They're coming. And that's why you're so important. Because we need to prove that Massachusetts is going to reject that special interest money, reject that attempt to control the agenda for America from outside of our state. And so this level of enthusiasm that is here today in the unlikely part of the first part of April is a good indication that we are the state of the Minutemen and women politically of 2013, to make sure that this referendum is one that we send a positive message, that we want to have the Obama inaugural address of 2013 implemented as policy on gun control, on immigration reform, on climate change, on ensuring that we guarantee health care and educational opportunity for all within our society. And so I want to go to Washington to be a partner with Elizabeth Warren for the 21st century. I want to go to fight for the Obama agenda. I want to follow in that incredible legacy of John Kerry and Ted Kennedy, and Jack Kennedy and Paul Saunders. Okay? That goes back 60 years. That's our 60-year history, and we're very proud of that. We're very proud of it. And I just want to tell you that I know that you're the heartbeat of the Democratic Party, and I also know that this race is about those kids on the porch right now at 88 Phillip Street in South Lawrence on the first floor of the triple-decker, and all the children in all of these 5 communities as well, and all the children across the country. 20% of the population, 100% of our future. And we have to make the same investment in them that was made in us, that made it possible for us to be here in this room, in the upper 1 percentile of the most fortunate people who ever lived in the history of the planet. Huh? And we know it. We know how fortunate we are and how different our lives are from our parents, our grandparents, who were just as smart and worked just as hard. We had great opportunities, okay? And we have to open up those opportunities for every child in our country today so they can unlock their potential. So I thank you, Martha, so much for that great introduction. I see my great pal Steve Grossman over here as well. Thank you, Steve, for all that you do. I know that John O'Brien is here, Mike Lake over here, Eileen Duff, Steve Kerrigan, I see Steve over here as well. Thatcher, where is Thatcher? Is he? Thatcher's right over here. Thank you so much for being here. Donna, Donna, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your help in this race as well. And Kathy Pesquina, I thank you as well, wherever she is. So, thank you. So I'm giving it everything I've got. We're putting together a world-class Get Out the Vote on April 30th, and we're going to test run the thing on April 30th to get it ready for Karl Rove and the Koch brothers, okay? So that they know that Democrats in Massachusetts do not agonize, we organize, okay? And what's happening here today is inspirational to me. Thank you all so much for allowing me to be here. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Let's have a round of applause. Thank you, everybody. Our event is concluded. Go in peace.